We always start with kind of an inspiration, some back-end message that we really want to translate into a full artwork or piece or mural. From there, build out this whole story that we can kind of simply tell and have it be, so many depths and layers to it rather than just the mural. One time we went out painting a waterfall. I was on my paddleboard. The currents was 10 times more than when we had scouted it. So we ended up just double rigging it and having to navigate everything in that moment. Yeah, we're from Oahu, Hawaii. We kind of grew up in nature, so it's the perfect blend of what has influenced us. It wasn't until I personally got into art, I was 20, and kind of just stumbled into an art class.
So I kind of went the photography route. We were both really visually inspired, so it was just different mediums, and then we kind of created this comic collective.
And we kind of create environmental artwork in nature and kind of go out on these expeditions and really push kind of the climate change and a lot of different issues.
I use biodegradable chalk for this piece so it doesn't harm the environment, but that also means I'm going to only have a day to complete the full piece because it starts to fade after that. I feel like everyone kind of starts off on that safe and comfortable road that's structured, and it's only when you go off on your own you truly find out who you are.
We always start with kind of an inspiration, some back-end message that we really want to translate into a full artwork or piece or mural. From there, build out this whole story that we can kind of simply tell and have it be, so many depths and layers to it rather than just the mural, the final mural. And it's been so much more satisfying to have the pieces be in different communities and environments and speak on different issues that we feel is important.
It's been about 3.5 hours, pretty deep in this desert.
This piece was actually inspired by my personal journey from Hawaii to New York. During the day I'd be working these odd jobs from dishwashing to bussing tables, and I would get off late at night, and the last thing I'd want to do is go work on art because I was so exhausted.
One time we went out and painting a waterfall. I was on my paddleboard. There was this little piece of wall that I wanted to paint, and the currents and kind of just pull of the water was 10 times more than when we had scouted it. It was either that or hike everything back up. So we ended up just double rigging it and having to navigate everything in that moment. Also, when we go to the Arctic, we kind of built a whole series around these icebergs where I'll paint these figures on them. And being strapped into these icebergs and I had no idea that these icebergs would flip and roll. It was, probably the quickest I ever painted, just because I didn't want to be strapped into this iceberg any longer than I should have.
The full piece can only be seen when the tide has emptied the bay, revealing almost 3 stories of hidden concrete. For that brief moment, she is finally unveiled, reaching out to the ocean proudly before being overtaken once more by nature.
Our Deep Seas project was actually started when we were on Oahu. I hadn't really seen the exact coral status in a while, and it was an issue that we didn't know anything about. And then once we dug a little further, it was completely black and white as far as Oahu's reefs and how the changes have affected it in maybe a little more than a decade. How are we gonna translate a piece into creating all this awareness for the reefs? We had no idea how to even attempt to go underwater with all the photography gear and the paint gear. So it was probably the most challenging project, just because the amount of changes we would have to make to go underwater. It felt like I was going back into a whole new type of medium and process and techniques, and scratch everything I knew from oil paintings. I ended up making these kind of more wax pastel type of pigment sticks that we had to create in order to make sure all the material was 100% safe for the marine life, and on top of that would benefit them in the end with concrete and these metal sheets that would turn into artificial reefs and habitats for these marine lives. And so many different back-end researching and learning about all of these factors that go into play when you're dealing with underwater marine life and how fragile the ecosystems are.